So after a very long wait, I finally finished The Land of the Lustrous by Haruko Ichikawa, or Ichikawa Haruko. So I got into this about 2021 and read all of the series, and then have been waiting for volume 13 to come out in English translation for I think almost 2 years now. And it finally came out this year. So the past couple weeks I've worked my way through the whole series again. I'm not really big into manga. This is the only one that I've actually read the whole thing of, and there's only one other one that I've read a few volumes of, but I do really like it. Combination of the really cool story and the really cool characters, and of course the beautiful art, but also the kind of philosophy of the whole thing. That's what really grabbed me. Now I understand enough to know that there is a lot of sort of Buddhist teachings and philosophy and even religion in this series, but I don't really know enough about that to sort of pick up on that, so I missed a lot of that. But I imagine if you knew a lot about Buddhism, you would get more out of it than I did. Not saying that I didn't get a lot out of it. I got tons out of this series. So kind of the main story revolves around these characters, the Lustrous, who are gemstone people. They are people who are, their bodies are entirely made of certain gemstones, and they take their names from those gemstones. So there's ruby, diamond, sapphire, etc., etc. But what makes them interesting, and what makes them sort of sentient, is the inclusions in their gemstone matrix. They have these microscopic inclusions that are these little tiny, think of them as sort of, that is their neurons, and they are placed throughout their whole body, and that sort of gives them consciousness, and they can break and shatter, and as long as all the pieces are brought back together, they regain consciousness and are essentially immortal. However, because their consciousness is spread throughout their entire body, if they lose pieces of that body, they lose a certain amount of memories. And so the main character, this phosphophylite, is a very weak gem, the lowest on the Mohs hardness scale. They're a 3.5, and so they break quite easily. And so this whole series is them wanting to improve themselves or be better, wanting them to change, not being happy with who they are, not being happy with their body, and wanting to grow, evolve, become something different. And due to the nature of these inclusions in this gemstone body, they are able to, when parts of them are destroyed or lost, to get replacement parts for them, and they can continue on. And so first Phos loses their legs, and then they get these agate legs from a shell put in place, and their inclusions take to these, and so they can continue on. They're much faster. Then they lose their arms, but they get their arms replaced with this metal alloy, so they have a platinum gold alloy. So they have sort of like really stretchy, kind of semi-liquid arms that they can alter. It makes them much stronger, and it can sort of hold the rest of themselves together. And then the big one is when they lose their head, and their head then gets replaced with the head of another gemstone, who all they have left of this gemstone is their head. So a new head, a new face, in this manga, a lot of them are sort of identified based on their hair. So new hairstyle, new color. And with this change as well, this head has its own inclusions from this other gemstone, and so there's sort of a mixture, an exchange of memories, and sort of an enhance in intelligence, because Phos is always kind of like the goofy, silly, I don't know the name of the trope, but the gemstone's head that they take was a very intelligent gem, and so they gain intelligence from that. But over the course of these changes, you start to question, is it still Phos? Is it still that sort of cutesy, goofy gem from the start of the series? So to me, it's just a wonderful way to explore the ship of Theseus, sort of philosophical question where in ancient Greece, there's this guy Theseus, he has this boat, and the argument goes, if one of the planks of the boat is rotten and it gets changed out, is it still the same boat? When you would probably say, well, yes, of course it's the same boat, it just had a plank changed out. But what if it gets to the point that at some point in the future, over half of all the planks of the boat have been changed? Is it still the same boat? What if all of the planks of that boat has been changed and none of the original planks are there? Is it still the ship of Theseus? What if you took all of the planks that had been removed and built a different ship with them? Would that be the real ship of Theseus, or is that a new ship of Theseus? At what point does a thing stop becoming what it had been and become something new? And that's sort of what, to me, this story is all about. This gem Phos who has a desire to change, and at what point do they stop becoming Phos, or are they always still Phos? And so Phos is short for phosphophylite. And so it's a really beautiful way of exploring change and evolution and the desire to become more. And does that more necessarily mean better, or do we lose something that we can never regain in the pursuit of something better? So how is Fos losing all of these body parts? Well, the main story set up that there are these gemstones that are on Earth. They are led by, or at least sort of looked after by, this person, Kongo Sensei, who is mysterious, but Kongo seems to find these gems that are sort of born out of the rock face. They sort of are eroded out, and if they have inclusions, they come to life. And so Kongo will raise them and train them and teach them how to speak and shape them so that they look anthropomorphic, they look human. But the gems are constantly under attack by these Lunarians, these beings that come from the moon that want to attack and capture the gemstones, presumably to decorate their moon palace. And so the gems have to fight to destroy the Lunarians. The gems also tend to fight in pairs. They have like battle pairs, which aren't really that useful, but it adds more of a, makes them a bit more human in that they're sort of paired up. They're couples. And throughout the course of the series, you will see different gems sort of stop being partners anymore, and they will partner up with other gems. And that's very much, to me, like relationships ending and reforming. And there are certain ones like Diamond and Bort, who they were originally a pair. Then Bort started working with Zircon, and they got along really well. And Zircon was a bit younger, but really is into fighting, which Bort's all about fighting. So they make a really good pair, and they sort of agree to team up permanently, leaving Diamond on her own. Diamond's like really cutesy one and not really into fighting. So, but she's like really heartbroken that sort of Bort broke up with her and that she couldn't sort of meet Bort's standards. And so throughout the whole course of this book, which spans thousands of years, there's this sort of weird feeling. There's sort of a lot left unsaid between Bort and Diamond, and that's true of others like Benito and Nepti, Rutile and Padparasha, or the gems whose old partners have been taken to the moon and destroyed or killed. And that's a really cool thing that really plays out and sort of ends in the 12th volume. But anyways, it's revealed throughout the course of this book, the sort of lore of the world, that humanity destroyed itself, as humanity inevitably would or will, and the only survivor was Kongo Sensei, this machine made by the humans, this artificial intelligence, this artificial being created by humans. Now, when humanity went extinct, it actually split itself into 3 different types of beings: soul, flesh, and bone. The bone are the Lustrous, these gemstone creatures. Flesh are the Admirabilis, these like sea creatures that have sort of fled to the sea because the planet's no longer hospitable. They don't play that big of a role overall. They show up here and again, but the soul is the Lunarians, these sort of ghost phantom-like creatures that are immortal and live on the moon. And near the very end of the series, it's revealed that Kongo Sensei, he's programmed to pray for people, and when he prays for people, that allows them to sort of pass on to the next world, or just to disappear into nothingness. And so that's what he had been doing, and all the Lunarians, which had been filling up the moon, they slowly disappear. But then over millennia, Sensei breaks down, and there's a remnant of Lunarians left on the moon, and they are immortal. They've been existing for millennia, and so they just want to stop existing, but they can't because Kongo Sensei stopped working. So their whole goal is to somehow get Sensei to start working again, and that's why they're attacking these gemstones. They recognize that Kongo Sensei loves these gemstones, and that if they can sort of take these gemstones away from Sensei, maybe something will spark in them, and then they will pray and release the Lunarians. But they sort of have a darker purpose, or at least their leader does that, or maybe not darker, but a hidden plan, and that is to create a new human. Because if they can create an actual human, then they can get Sensei to pray. And then even further than that, it's not to get Sensei to pray. They realize Sensei is broken, but if an actual human tells Sensei to finally shut down, then Sensei will shut down, and then they can use the remains of Sensei to create sort of a new Sensei Kongo, a new creature to pray for them. And that's sort of their end goal, but we don't find this out until much later. And so Fos is the one that they choose to be the foundation upon which they build their new human. So they recognize in Fos very human concerns, like the desire to improve, the urge to sort of make those that love them proud of them. So Kongo Sensei, who loves Fos. And so the whole series is them sort of shaping and changing Fos, who's doing this willingly, trying to improve themselves to sort of create this human. And it's really tragic seeing how Fos, in this desire to improve themselves, they're losing parts of themselves and thus losing memories of themselves and sort of parts of their consciousness, and they really are becoming a different being. And the things that they're losing are very important fundamental things, such as this promise to Cinnabar. It all starts with there's this gem Cinnabar, who Cinnabar has mercury in it, and so they are really cut off from the rest of the Lustrous because their mercury is poisonous. And so Fos says that, hey, I promise you I'm going to find you a job, and it's going to be a fun job, and I'm going to find some way for you to fit into our society. But along the way, Fos really starts to lose track of that promise, and that sort of it should be the driving goal and ambition of Fos, but it gets sort of mixed up and left behind. And Fos doesn't just lose parts of themselves, they lose some of their closest friends and partners. So they partner up with this one gem Antarcticite, who they then lose to the moon. They then partner up with Ghost, they lose Ghost as well, and then within Ghost, because I think it's Ghost Quartz has like a gem within itself. It's like a gem with an outer shell of a gem. So the outer shell gets shorn away, and then the inner gem, Karen Gorm, promises Ghost that they will look after Fos. And so they sort of model themselves on Antarcticite and sort of look a lot like Antarcticite to try and be what they think Fos needs and wants. And at one point, Fos is trying to figure out the mystery of the Lunarians and the mystery of Kongo Sensei and sort of the whole history of the world and everything. And so they end up traveling to the moon and they take a bunch of gemstones with them, ones that are sort of not happy with how things are. Ones like Diamond, who are having issues with Bort, or with ex-partners, or just with life in general. And it's really interesting, the different characters. We have people like Goshen, who is such a happy-go-lucky guy that they go to the moon for fun and they spend the whole time there having tons of fun. But then there's others like Yellow Diamond, who's the oldest of all of them, and sort of, I mean, I don't know if depression is the right word, but sort of loses the will to live, or sort of doesn't realize, or doesn't really have a reason to keep going, and they start sort of self-harming, like because they're gemstones. Yellow Diamond will walk off of a cliff and believe that they're a Lunarian that can fly and float around, but they just smash and shatter and sort of lose themselves. And then there are the time jumps, which that's what really gets me. So when Fos loses their head, it's 100 years before they are resuscitated. And then when they're all on the moon, they're trying to get Sensei to pray, and Fos is like, if I can sort of take the gemstones away from Sensei, then Sensei will pray. And that's when Fos really starts to fixate on, I need to destroy all of the other gemstones, and sort of becomes this hideous monster where their anthropomorphic body has been cracked and destroyed and put back together so many times that they're very, very monstrous looking. And they go down to Earth and fight against the Lustrous and lose, and their body, the parts of Fos, get sort of split up into different boxes and buried on different parts of Earth. And 220 years go by before Kongo Sensei digs up them and puts Fos back together. And with Fos back together, they escape to the moon, and coming back with an army, and they bring like Diamond, and they bring all the other gems that sort of have issues with those still on Earth, with like ex-partners and whatnot. And they have this final confrontation where all the gems get destroyed. Diamond and Bort finally fight each other and sort of end up destroying each other. Even Benito, who they're like the most normal gem, and their partner Nepti is the really weird one. And there's this really cute moment where Benito finally says to Nepti, like, hey, you're so weird that I find it so difficult to understand you sometimes, and it's really hard for me, but I just want to say that like I still care for you, and like despite that I miss you, sort of thing. And they sort of have a reconciliation, but then of course they're destroyed because of this massive fight, which again leaves all of the gems destroyed, and Fos, or what is it, Fos approaches Kongo Sensei and demands that they pray, but Sensei's like, I can't. And then Fos says something like, well, then you're utterly useless, just fall apart or something. And so Kongo Sensei says, yes, finally, I've been waiting for a human to tell me that my job is done. And then they just collapse, but they leave a part of them, this eye behind, that they say, take that, Fos, and pray for happiness. And so Fos takes that eye and begins incorporating the final part into themselves, because they are an amalgamation of a pastiche of so many different beings and peoples and whatever, which is what's making them human. And this final sort of thirst for revenge and hatred against Sensei is sort of the final piece in the puzzle of what makes someone human. They take this part of Sensei into them. Meanwhile, the Lunarians have scooped up all the remains of all the gems and taken them back to the moon. And so Fos is left alone on Earth as the only sentient being. And it's revealed on the moon that they are going to become sort of the new Sensei, but it's going to take 10,000 years for this installation process to complete. And so Fos is abandoned and left totally alone on Earth for 10,000 years. While on the moon, they sort of perfect this way to turn the Lustrous into Lunarians. So everyone has become this immortal Lunarian being, and they managed to bring back all of the old gems, and sort of everyone lives happily ever after, like Bort and Diamond to get back together. Even Pat Parasha and Rutile, the doctor, who had gone like kind of crazy when the sort of mystery of Pat Parasha that they couldn't sort of heal. Once that was taken away from them, they really lost it. But they're back together. Yeah, it is sort of a happy ending for everyone, but they're all sort of cognizant that this is only because we're sort of sacrificing and abandoning Fos to Earth and to solitude for 10,000 years. And yeah, that's really rough. And then volume 12 ends with the 10,000 years being up, and all the Lunarians, so basically all the souls of all the sentient beings, rush down to Earth and ask this new god, this what had been Fos, or what is still Fos, asks them, pray for us and release us to nothingness. And Fos sort of says that I could have you, like now have the power to make you all my eternal slaves, or I could force you to live in eternal torment. But okay, I'll do it. And does it, and prays and wipes out and annihilates and causes the extinction of every single being. And with that, sort of humanity ends. Everything that had been human or that has descended from humans are now destroyed, except for Fos themselves. And that's how volume 12 ended. And I had to wait 2 years for volume 13, thinking it's over. What else could there be? Is there going to be sort of happily ever after, where they all come back to life and live joy-free as these cute little non-binary gem people running around? No. So volume 13, I really did like volume 13. I thought it was a really good ending. It's very much an epilogue to the story. It wraps it up and it gives it an ending that has a complete finality to it. I mean, you could sort of say that the main story ends with 12, but Fos' story doesn't end with 12. Fos is left alone on Earth at the end of 12. So 13 is really cool. It starts with, who knows how many millennia have passed, or millions of years or whatever, but Fos sort of awakens again. It is still like this god form, Fos, and hears someone trying to communicate, and comes across this inorganic mineral-based life form, kind of similar to the Lustrous, except this one has no inclusions like the humans did. It's not in the human lineage. It's a totally new type of being, and it just looks like a rock, but somehow its vibrations, it's creating sound and communicating. And so Fos is immediately like, oh, well, you can't walk, you're just a rock. I'll give you the ability to move, and then I'll give you the ability to see, because you can't see either. And the rock's like, no, you don't have to do that. Like, I'm totally okay as it is. I'm just happy I have someone to talk to. You don't need to change me. And I think that really sort of answers the whole question of, I mean, Fos themselves were constantly looking, how do I change? How do I get better? How do I evolve? I'm not good enough. I don't like this body. I need to make it better. And now we get to this new life form, and Fos is immediately like, how can I change you to make you better? And they're like, no, I'm good. You don't need to change anything. And they meet a couple of the others, rock people, who are literally just rocks, and start chatting with them and start telling them the sort of story of humans and the history of humanity. There is one sort of funny character. So Kongo Sensei, who had been this machine created by humans, there had been an older sibling, this other initial AI that had sort of gone rogue and got someone killed in a very hilarious way, and so had been thrown into the ocean. And it doesn't matter. This character shows up for this volume as sort of very much gave me, like, as I was reading their dialogue, I'm hearing the voice of Calcifer from Howl's Moving Castle, that voice actor, the English one. Very Studio Ghibli, or is it Studio Ghibli sort of character. Very funny. And so, yeah, so Fos sort of relates the tale of humanity and realizes that they want this new life that's been created to be pure and to not have sort of any of the burdens of the inheritance of humans, the inequality and the hatred and the thirst for revenge and all the sort of bad that humanity has brought. And so they are going to try and burn the bridge that is the bridge between the old world of humans and this new world, and they are the bridge. They are the link connecting these two, and they need to sever that. And so they continue to tell the story for millions and millions of years, and the sun has expanded to this point where it's going to engulf all the earth and destroy everyone and everything. And they're kind of okay with that. They're like, everything's got to have an end. But for whatever reason, the Lunarians, before they all disappeared, had left a single spaceship, and it's enough for everyone to sort of get off and to go to another planet. And at first they're like, well, that's just sort of delaying the inevitable, kicking the can down the road. I mean, if the end's going to happen, it's going to happen. Like, the next planet we go to is going to be destroyed. But then a couple of these rock people are like, well, actually, I'm kind of working on this new song, and I want everyone to sing it together. So, like, maybe we should go just so we have more time to work on this, which is really wholesome. And I think you could almost say that's, I don't know if the meaning of life, but the reason for existence. It's like, yes, we're all, like, I'm in a meta way, like, we are all going to die. I'm going to die. I'm not going to live forever. And after I'm dead, I mean, it'll only be a few years and no one will ever remember that I even existed. So, like, why do we bother going on? Why don't we just end it now? But that little rock saying things like, well, hey, I got a little art project I'm working on. I want to sort of create something new and bring some joy to some people for a little bit longer. So why don't we just, like, wait a bit longer and see what else we can make? I think that's a good enough reason for continued existence as any. Yeah, and so they all get on the ship, but then of course Fos does not, and Fos says, I need to burn the bridge. I need to be the one to, I'm the link to the old world. It needs to end, and these people on this new world can experience this new world. And so the Earth's about to be destroyed, and then Fos has this one sort of shard of a gem of phosphophyllite within them, and they take that and send that away on the ship, so that there is a small piece of Fos that is going with them. But the rest of the sort of god form of Fos stays, and we have this beautiful, because it is among us, not just a written word, we have these beautiful panels of the sun burning away the Earth, and it burning away the different layers of Fos, and Fos sort of regresses, but I don't mean regresses in a negative way. Regresses, and we see each as sort of the forms of Fos right back to the very original one that the story started with. And then that's it. The world is consumed and Fos is destroyed. But of course, we have this spaceship with all these new rock people on it, and it ends with them finding a beautiful new world for them to explore and live together. And that tiny shard of phosphophyllite is there, experiencing it as well. And there's still this one of the final panels is the shard sort of falls, hits another rock, and a little chip of it breaks off, because Fos is a 3.5, a very weak gem, but Fos is okay with that. And Fos says something like, well, I feel lighter now. They're very small, they're almost microscopic, but they're still there, and they get to experience this new, hopefully wholesome, new perfect world. And that's how the story ends. And it's just like, it's fantastic. I mean, how many stories go to the literal end of the world and sort of an epilogue beyond that? It really wraps up all the character stories. I mean, if you would have had it with, and then the Lustrous all lived happily ever after, and they were all just a bunch of cuties running around with Kongo Sensei as their leader, and they all lived happily ever after. I mean, you'd have to realize that, these immortal beings are just going to continue on existing for millennia and millennia, and nothing's going to go wrong. They're all going to be happy. No. There needs to be some sort of end. Things will change, and that's the whole series is things change. So having this ending where all of the characters we know are gone, and the world has changed so that it's totally different, and it's new, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just, that's the way it is. That is time. Time changes, things change, people change. So yeah, I'd love to read more manga because it's like so quick to read. You sit down in an hour and read one of these volumes easily, and it's really pretty and stuff. Yeah, I'm really glad I came across this one, and I'm really happy with the final volume. And I think I've talked enough. So that's Haruko Ichikawa's Land of the Lustrous.